Hey guys, here we are in Rompler. Now this is something I haven't really touched on too much on my channel, but it is something I've used a lot. I use other pieces of software for this kind of thing too, like Highs and other things, but Rompler's a really easy way to knock something out basically and create an original plugin with no programming. And I mean, there's some things you can't do with it, of course, but this is a good way to get started in this world and also create things that you can actually use. When you open it up, you're going to come to this interface right here, which is basically the mapping editor, where you can drop in all your samples and be able to play them back. And you're going to be able to tell it, the software, where you want them, when they kick in, at what velocity, how hard you're striking a key, stuff like that, where they're laid out on the keyboard. Now this doesn't make its own sounds. You have to make the sounds, and then you'll bring them in here and essentially tell the keyboard where they're going to be and so forth, or the plugin where they're going to be, and then you can add effects and all kinds of other great stuff to them. This is the mapping editor, and then one tab over right here you've got the GUI editor, and this is your graphic user interface, and this is the way your plugin is going to look. Now you can see when you highlight it, you can move all these things around to where you want them, but when you click on preview design, then you can of course slide them up and down and show how they would function. Now this doesn't make any effects changes here when you do this, which I hope they change in the future, but you can test out all the interface and how all that's going to work. So basically you can come through here and change things like what it says, blah blah blah, or you can just delete all this stuff and do all of your own thing. Like, if you wanted to change the name of it, right down here you can see it says Rompler. You can say Red Spectre, and then you're good to go. Your Red Spectre workstation, etc. You can change colors, your background color, your text colors, all that kind of stuff is available through here. So your hue, your saturation of everything, and so forth. And you can load the background, you can turn that off and on. This is the original image it used to come with, and I'm not sure whether they still include that. You can select a background color, from here, anything you want, just any color whatsoever. So if you wanted to use that, you can also bring in your own original artwork for your background, for your knobs, everything, to make it as custom as you want. And the last thing over here is going to be your audio and MIDI settings. So you pick your audio card and whatever you've got going on. I'm using a Keystation 88, so I'm going to click that on to make sure that that uses my keyboard when I'm playing. So now we're going to come back over here to the mapping editor, and you can see right here on the right hand side we've got no samples loaded, and we're at preset 1, which you can make presets, add one, add another, remove them, etc., move them around in whatever order you like. And we have a plugin name here, and I'm just going to call this Sylvan. Let's just say that's the name of our plugin. So right here, we're going to put in our company name. So I'm going to put in Red Spectre Studios, and it helps if you spell your company name right. And the code, just leave it. It'll automatically generate that. That way it doesn't get confused with other codes of other plugins. You don't want that happening. So just let it automatically generate. And then we're going to make a preset. So this first preset, we're going to come in here and we're going to put Shimmer. There we go, and it's just going to change that first one up here to Shimmer. And we can set if it's a polyphonic sound or a monophonic, how many voices can play at the same time, if it's got any glide, bend to the notes, or any of that kind of stuff. Any of this stuff, the LFOs happening here, the filters, blah, 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 right? So many things that can be affected. So what we need to do next, before it can make any sound, is actually drop in some samples. You'll have to make these in other software because this does not generate sounds for you. Maybe it will someday, but that's usually the case in these type of plugin making applications. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to a folder that I have set up here for some samples that I already have created. And you can create these any way you want. You can record them yourself, you can download them from places, you can generate them. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do it. And right now, we called it Shimmer, so I'm just going to kind of pick something that has maybe that in it. So I got this Shimmer ball, I'm gonna grab all 3 of these waves I've got. I don't even know exactly what they're doing. And this glass roll, okay? And we're gonna take those, see if there's any more. Oh, there's another one here. Let's grab it as well. And this was for another plugin that I have called Dream that I am going to be releasing pretty soon. And I'm going to grab all of those, and we're just gonna drag them from this window onto the Rompler window. And when we let it go, we'll be met with this setting here saying, where do you want to start the samples and so forth. And I'm just gonna, it's gonna do this based on how many you have. I'm just gonna do the default here and say import. And now it's gonna drag those out onto these keys. If that's not where you want them, for one, you can stretch them out by grabbing an edge and doing this, or you can remove your cursor till it turns into the move icon and put that where you want, and then stretch it in either direction. You can also stretch these top to bottom to say where this stops kicking in, and you can even overlap another one on top of it to say where something else might kick in, even if they are playing at the same time. So like you could take this guy and you can pull it over and overlap these in any way that you want. They can start, let's say, partially up. You just kind of take this top piece and pull it down, and you can see that they will say wherever it is you want these to trigger. You can have 10 samples triggering at different depths, different velocities. Just depends on what you want. So I'm just going to pull this one straight back down, figure out kind of where these are already by default. So I'm just going to click on my keys here. And that's a little ball that I rolled around in the glass. There's another one. I'm going to grab this one and make it tick up that much. You get the idea. Just going to stretch these out until they've got kind of a range for each one. I'm going to move these bell things over though. So when we've got these 3 and I play on my keyboard now, you can hear that they actually do what you want them to do on those keys. I'm just going to go ahead and grab these other guys and just pull these up higher for now. And then the shimmer ball parts, the reverse kind of jingly bell ones, I think I'm going to take these and then pull these up from the bottom until they kick in when you play the key at a certain velocity or hardness or quickness. And I'm just going to drag this one out a little bit too and bring it up to about the same trigger point. So when you're playing at a regular here and then you hit it even harder, it's going to play both those samples together. That's kind of the point of that velocity trigger. So let's find out. You hear it to them both. That's just the one, and that's both, and that would be both. It's kind of hard to tell in that example, but you get the idea. And we're just going to call that shimmer for now. Why not? So you can also preset effects for these or just add effects later on, but it's kind of cool to preset them now to kind of listen to what they're going to sound like. So in my reverb size, I'm just going to put the reverb mix up a bit, and you can now hear this with some reverb on it. And I mean, it's really easy and cool to do, simple. And so we have one preset called Shimmer. Let's create another preset just to be able to do that. And I'm going to go here to add preset, hit that, and now we're prompted to put in a name. So I'm just going to kind of check in my folder here what I had available and see. Let's do a flute, okay? So this time we're just going to call this, flute thing, because you can name it whatever you want. And we're going to say add preset. It'll clear back out because now we're on the flute thing preset. You can always drop this down and still see your presets. You can even move these up and down using these buttons here if your order is not what you want it to be. So in this flute thing preset, the plugin and all that's going to stay. This one's called flute thing. We're going to leave it, pretty much the way it is for now. And I'm going to go grab the samples for this flute thing. So I'm just going to grab, and the problem is these are not set up the way I would name them to just drop them in and have them be perfect. But this, for the purposes of this video, we're just going to do it this way. So I'm going to grab all these guys. They are written down as in A4, A5, B4, B5. but the keyboard might not recognize them. I mean, the program might not recognize them in that way. So I'm going to do this to probably C2 to start with, and just see how much that'll drag it out that way. So import, and it lays our stuff out. Let's find out what we can play. All right, so these are all out of whack, but you do get the idea at least. And you, like I said, can come in here now and you can throw on some reverb or whatever you like just to kind of hear it. But let's go back now that we have two different presets and go back to our GUI editor now. Now the GUI editor is the graphic user interface, and when you want to preview it, you click this button and you can turn your knobs and everything, but they will not have an effect on the effects or anything. This is just to test that your knobs work and different things. So we do have a playable keyboard here, and it does light up, and you can set all of those colors. You can get rid of all this and put all your own stuff too. Let's start there. So how do we do that? We turn off the preview. We come up here to edit and clear GUI. And we say okay, and everything goes away. Now if we want our GUI to be larger than this, we can always change those numbers right here. It'll be wider or taller, whatever we want. For now, let's just leave it black. Let's go ahead and just bring in a random image that I can use for a background. So I'm just gonna come over here, choose file, and then I'm just gonna look around for some of these different things, and it's going to not show up. And you're wondering, why is it not showing up? And you cry. We're going to come over here and click on background image on or off, and now you can turn it on and you have your background image. But what are you going to do? You have nothing to control anything with. Well, by right clicking, you have all these different things you can do. This is just to start with, but first things first, we're going to need to have something that lets us pick which preset we're going to be playing with. So we're going to use what they call a drop down. So we're going to come down here to drop down, click on it, and you'll have this guy. I'm just going to drag it around. You can also drag it at the corner and set its size. And while it's selected, you can come over here and you can see right down here all of the things about it. It's where it's at, its X and Y point, its width and height, the background color of it. We can click that and say, I think I want that background color to be a little more, you know, blue-green like the rest of it or something. And there you go. That looks a little nicer. So we can just click out of there. And when you're in there in that background color, you can see right here this number at the top. You can click that and copy and paste it to make other things that exact same color. Text color we can change. Let's just go ahead and select that, and we can try to figure out what we want. But I'm just gonna move this around until I get something kind of like that gray blue. Just gonna pick a blue and then try to match kind of what's happening here and here. We click out of that, and now we got the outline color we can click into and do the same thing. We can click that as a darker color like so. And then the arrow color is that little drop down arrow there on the right hand side. We can go in and change all the text, all the other things to match, just like we did here. You can also come in here and change the font. So you click on typeface, and then we can use the ones that they have here. I think that you can import temporarily a font right here on edit import font, so you can find your own for that moment. I think they do that so that they don't provide you with fonts and they don't get in trouble if you use them. So you just click on the typeface. A lot of the ones that are in here are, you know, for the most part, pretty usable. Some are a little silly, but it depends on what you're making. Depending upon, you know, I like this one a lot. It kind of has a kind of futuristic vibe to it. So I'm gonna click off of that so I can move some things around. I'm gonna put this drop down right at the top and just kind of put it here. Now all of your presets will have their names when you actually export the plugin. So if they don't show up right now, it's fine. But what this is for, when you select this, you're gonna click here, you're gonna drop down, you're gonna have your presets there. If you only have two, only two are gonna show up, and that's what you have here, shimmer and flute thing. So when it's on there, of course, you're gonna have the flute and so forth. All those are set. You can center the text, which I'd rather do for this kind of a drop down menu. And the control link is what it's going to actually control. So when you click here, you can have that drop down do any of these things. Right now it's set to preset select, and that's what we're doing. We're selecting a preset with it, but you can have it change all these other things, LFO type, synth mode, etc. So now with that set, let's go ahead and turn off this preview. And what I want to do is create a knob for adding an effect or controlling an effect. So if we wanted to make some, let's say a reverb on here, you can do this with as many knobs as you need, or even just one to control everything. But let's just say add knob, and we're gonna have this default knob. It works fine. There's a whole bunch of other knobs you can use. This one looks a little ugly, so let's change it out. Well, you do that by having it highlighted. You come over here to where you get this load film strip knob. You click on default knob and it'll open up your window here to find other knobs. And I'm gonna go down to, let's say this blue knob. It doesn't look like a knob because it's in a strip that plays like an animation. I'm gonna say okay. And now we have this cool blue knob. I'm just gonna resize it here. And if you get it squished, you can come over here and you can see that the width and height are supposed to be the same. So that looks a little stretched. Let's go ahead and change this one to 64. And now you have your knob nice and even. And this can control, let's say, the amount of reverb you have. Well, how are you gonna know that? Well, guess what? Right here, we can right click and add a label. And within this label, we can move that wherever we need it, just like this. And with it selected, you can drop down over here where it says label. Let's type in mix, because this was going to be the standard way of determining how much reverb you have. But you're like, but it still doesn't look like reverb. Well, here you go. You right click, you add another label, or you can select the one you've got, right click on it and duplicate that label. Now you can move it up here, and with it highlighted, you move down here and you type in reverb. Now it's not going to do anything yet because you haven't told it what it's controlling. So we're going to click on that knob. We're going to come down here to the bottom and we're going to see, these are all my controls of it, but this right here says control link. We're going to drop it down and say, oh, these are all the things that knob can control. What we're going to do is find reverb and we're going to say reverb mix. That's what that knob now controls. Now we cannot preview how that works or how much within Rompler because we've got to be in an actual DAW, digital audio workstation to hear how much that's being affected when you turn that knob. So when I turn the knob here, you can see, and I turn it all the way up, still no reverb. But the way to test the actual reverb sound is simply to come back out of that preview GUI. We're going to go back over here into the mapping editor, and we're going to go down. And while we're in Flute Thing, you're just going to come down here till you see your reverb mix, and you can turn this up or down right here to test it. So back here, we have reverb mix, but there's other types of knobs we can have to control reverb. You just click on that knob, come down here to where it's controlling. We're not going to change what it does, but we're going to look at the other options. So if I click on reverb mix, you can see you can also set one for reverb size and reverb damping. So let's go ahead and click on this knob, right click it, duplicate it. We're going to right click it and duplicate it again. It kind of puts it in a nice layout there. We're going to click on this label, right click and duplicate that and put it over where we want it. Right click on it again, duplicate it again and put that where we want. And remember what these can be? We're going to come down here and make this one not reverb mix, but this is going to be reverb size. So we're going to come over here to our label now, and we're going to fill that in with size. And you notice it doesn't fill in all the way, so we need to make this a little longer and then you'll be able to see it. But right here, we also need to change the control here from reverb mix to damping. Make sure this one is also on size, which it is. So now when we use these, when the plugin is generated, we will have mix, size, and damping, and they will work when you play your flute, believe it or not. That was a lovely sound. So if you want to change other things, there's so many other things you can do. Now, if you wanted to put an image in here to make either like a panel or something that lays behind this or just a static image, there's only one issue that exists right now. You cannot put this on top and then change the order that it goes in, unfortunately. It's something that really drives me crazy. So in a way, you either want to create all of this in Photoshop before you come in for your background, or you're gonna have to put this on and take all your knobs off and re-put your knobs back on if you bring it in like an image, which it kind of kills me. It's one of the things that probably annoys me the most about the program, even though the rest of it's really good, especially for faster stuff, but you can get really intricate with it as well. But that's how you can set up an effect. That's how you can set up your presets here. And you can also do things like layer inside that mapping editor. Like if we had two sounds in here, and you can have them be affected either by velocity, or you could have them be affected by a knob. So if you were to put a knob back on your GUI editor and add that in here, and you want to make this knob now control the layer of a sound as far as the mix from, let's say, layer 1 to layer 2, you come in here and select that. You can now go down to the control link, and you can come down and say, instead of control link, you go to link to layer control. Now, because I don't have more than one layer, it's not going to really do anything, but you could say right here, link to the layer gain. So now, click on this. When it's set up, you can actually turn up the different levels of the different layers within a single sound. So in the mapping editor, you can come over here, and if you needed another layer to this one sound, right now this isn't about velocity layers, this is about layers. You can come in and right here to edit, add sample layer, and it's going to add a separate layer here. And this can be a completely different sample map setup, but they are within the same sound. They play at the same time. But this particular layer, right now it's called default layer. Let's change the name of it to something else. You can change the order of it. And let's scroll down and find where our layer name is right here. We're going to call this layer 2. And now it'll say layer 2. This will say default layer, but you can change that to layer 1. Now we can mix between default layer and 2. So let's go ahead and change the name of this default layer by coming down here and finding where its name is. Call this layer 1. And this will just help me illustrate the change that you can make here. So we have two sounds. Let's just say we have other sounds in here and other sounds in here. Now this is all within the same preset of flute thing. If you come back to your GUI editor, so if I have this knob right here, I can come down here to the link to layer control. This is the layer gain. This is the gain for layer 1. So this is the volume for layer 1, which we have on here on this layer 1 with all of the flute. Layer 2, if it had other sounds, would be here. So back on your GUI editor, we could add yet another knob. Let's just duplicate this one. And on this one, we can have it linked to a layer control, but this time we're going to have it linked to layer 2, because now we have these, because now we have a second layer. Layer 2's gain. So this can be the gain of layer 1, how loud that layer is of that sound, and how loud the second sound. Maybe it's a bass or a bell or something over the top of that flute. And you can adjust those levels of those sounds, and you can add as many layers as you want, all within the same instrument, all within the same preset. And then when you swap out to, let's say, shimmer, all the interface is going to stay the same, which is another thing I don't care for. It'd be nice if this swapped with each preset, but you can now take these same knobs, and within the shimmer preset, you can now say, well, when shimmer comes up, I want the control link to control the layers of that one. So back in our mapping editor, we only have one layer, but if we added yet another one, let's just go ahead and add a sample layer here. And this is called default layer, but let's change the second one to be called bells. Okay, oh, bells. You don't want to spell bells that way. Okay, and then default layer, we're going to call this one, I don't know, let's just call it violin, okay? Violin, if it was a violin. Now you have violin and bells on the shimmer preset. Flute thing, you have layer 1 and layer 2, but if we go back to the shimmer preset, which will be able to be in your drop-down menu of your actual plugin. Now we go back to the GUI editor here. Let's say we're in the shimmer preset. Now this knob here can control whatever you want. as far as its layer. So link to layer control, right now in Shimmer, we have the bells gain. And if we click on the other one, let's just turn that off. This will be for the violin gain, and this one will be for the bells gain. So as you switch those out, these do change per preset. So that's very cool. You can always have, let's say, 2 sounds per preset, or however many you want to set up, or just one. Just make sure that maybe the other ones don't work on those, but they do work definitely on 1 or 1 and 2 or 1 and 2 and 3, or however you want to set that up. So that's another way of doing that. You can even again add another label and make sure this one says, and I try to keep these labels small so they don't overlap the knobs, because they might interfere with their turnability. But on that label, you can say on this one it's layer 2 or layer 1, sorry. You don't want to call it violin because it's not violin every time. So that would be layer 1, and then the other one would be, of course, layer 2. And that way you know that for every sound you bring up, you have a layer 1 and a layer 2 of it, and you can adjust those accordingly. It gives you a lot of freedom. For such a simple program, this really does give you a lot of leeway that way. And other things you can do, let's move on. We can right click and add a fader. Now a fader is going to be a setup like this. Now when you move a fader, it does run along this vertical path. You can create a graphic that is your little tick marks or the border, the metal edges or whatever you want to for that. So that's another way of handling that. Then you can come over here and of course assign these to things. Like if you had 4 of these, let's just duplicate it and duplicate it again and duplicate it again. You've got 4. Now each one of these, you click on it, you come down over here to control link and you say, let's make this my attack. And then this one here, we're going to go to control link and make this my decay. And this one is going to come down here and go to my sustain. And this one is going to be now down here and be my release. So now I have an ADSR that we can label ADSR. You can put these anywhere you want to put them. Let's say maybe they're running up the middle here. You can put graphics around behind them, etc. I definitely suggest putting those graphics in first. Otherwise, you're going to be having to delete these, and there's just no way to control layer order after you get stuff set, which I think is a big downfall. However, I hope they're working on that in the next thing, because the graphics here, the worst thing about it is not having control over your layers after you've added a whole bunch of stuff. And let's say you want to add one more thing, it won't go under. You'd have to get rid of all your stuff that's going to interfere with and then re-add it all. It's a bit of a pain. So anyway, we have, let's say that, and you can see that if I put this under now, this does go under this because I put this on first. If I duplicate this though, you can see that this one does not go under because it was put on after. So guys, fix that. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on and see what else we got. Right clicking, we can now add a button. So that comes with a few different types of buttons, and you can go into your folder. And this is the default on button and off button. These are the images you're going to use to change those. So, we go back in here, we find some buttons, whatever you got. I don't know what are in here, but let's say static. There's a speaker, there's some backgrounds. You get the idea though. You can bring button images in just the same. We also have, there's the drop downs we already made one of. You've seen the knobs as well. And the labels. So now there's a meter. So this is going to be like your readout. It's not going to show anything right now because in the program we're not going to get the reactivity of things like this, but it will definitely automatically show up in your plugin when you go to use it. We can also spread these out. Sometimes that's a little ugly. You can make these as long and tall, whatever you want. Stick that up here for now. Those typically don't do anything. You can set the meter range in decibels and what it's linked to, the left or the right. You can do 2 separate meters, one for the left and one for the right, which is always nice. Within here, let's go ahead and keep moving on. We have that meter. We have a VU meter now, and there's a few different ones that you can get. I suggest making these because I think these are a little bit clunky and old school looking. I personally like the kind of a higher tech looking UV meter, a VU meter, and typically I'll go into something like After Effects, or well, you can use Photoshop, but like a Blender or something like that works really well. For building your own custom stuff. Yes, it's another thing you have to learn if you really want to be custom, but I highly recommend it. Okay, right clicking, let's move on. We have a spectrum analyzer. Now this can be used when you play to see it's not going to show here, but you get to see your little audio waveform move around. We can obviously size that however we need or want to. You can change all of the colors. One thing I really like to do with it is to take this background color and take its alpha all the way down. So now you just have the line, which you can stick anywhere, and it just kind of makes that easier to work with. Plus you can size how far away from everything you want that waveform to jump up and down. So I think that looks really classy. All right, so now we're gonna move on from that spectrum analyzer to keyboard. So now we can add a keyboard in here, which is very cool. So if you wanna stick something, let's say at the bottom, you can drag it out to be to where you want it. Of course, you can drag it out to be whatever size you want it. You can even make it taller and shorter and so forth. Let's say we wanted that there. We can then take and you see how it goes over because it was put on last. I want to be able to change those at will when I want to, the layer order. Either way, so we have this. You can now go in and change all of the key colors if you want. You know, all your keys could be red, blue, whatever you want, and just kind of make stuff fit in with your color scheme, something like that, let's say. So that's nice. You can make them, they do light up when you press the keys, and you can decide what color that is that it lights up. You can change the color of the black keys, everything too. I want to be able to change the graphic of the individual keys, so I can put in, let's say, a rotten, age-looking piano or something like that. Anything you want, or if you want to put in custom graphics, like all of your keys are finger bones or something, things like that. Someday, maybe. This is something that in other software you can do because it's a little more in-depth with the programming and stuff, but for here, I mean, this is the fast way to do it, so you can't have everything yet. But with that, we can adjust the line color and everything of the keyboard, which is pretty cool. The range that it's set for. So after keyboard, we have drum pads now we can add in. These can have their colors changed as well. I typically leave kind of the defaults unless I'm really wanting a color. And then now when you hit it, it should come up with that color. Right now, though, the preview doesn't seem to be showing what I would like it to. There we go. But when it says select a light color, so if I'm going to go maybe with another light blue here, so now you should have that, but it's going to be a mix because it is green. The pad color itself is going to affect that. I'm just going to go with white, and then now when I click this, it should be more closer to that green or blue that I want. So you have to play with that a little bit, and you can add as many of these guys as you want. Like, let's say you had a little section of drum pads. You can size them however you like. You can make them trigger sound. So I'm going to duplicate and duplicate and duplicate right here, and you can have this little drum section. You can put labels on them. Each one, though, you can come down here and say, load it with what? Well, let's just say this is going to be an image, but you can also say, well, which MIDI note is it going to play? Let's say that one. So now, it should play when you were to click on whichever one that is. It says F sharp 1, so that's going to be somewhere like, let's just see. Maybe it's this one. But anyway, they will show up in Flash when they're ready. And that's the off and on of our guys there. Let's go ahead and see what else we have on our list here. So drum pad, you have a MIDI meter to say you're getting MIDI information or not. This one is showing up as a button, but you can have that look like any of the artwork that you have. And the vendor button, this is cool because now you can put this somewhere and say that when someone clicks on it, they know this is the information about your plugin. And all you have to do is have it highlighted. You can change all the colors of the button off and on, the text, the border color, and you can even change, you know, the actual, you know, information here that's going to pop up when you click on it. So if I click here and I click on the info, boom, we get Red Spectre. You can put in your website or whatever you have and say okay. You can have that offer on here to see what it's going to look like when it's offer on. There's so many things that can happen within these few things though. Like I said, you know, all the sizes of everything and so forth. And then when you go into your mapping editor, it gets absolutely crazy because each one of these sounds has so many things you can set. The gain of it, the looping points if they loop, you know, all the effects, the compression, everything that you may or may not, you know, want, where the velocities start and end, and all the things, you know, all your, obviously you can tune your samples here, pan them to where, you know, it's going to be over here, over there, whatever you need to do with it to make it work is all here, which is pretty amazing for something this simple. So I say, check back for more stuff. I'm going to be doing some more tutorials with it, making a complete instrument, things like that. So if this was cool, like and subscribe and come back and I will have more for you. Have a good one.